Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of Eastern Area Planning Committee. And someone's got their speaker on. Well, that's why we do tests before. Anyway, as long as that's correct, I think the echo's gone. I'm Graham Pass, Chairman of Committee. This committee meeting is the one we were due, the exact agenda we were due to hold on the 14th of September, which was, of course, a week after Her Majesty, the late Queen Elizabeth, passed away. So obviously we cancelled that meeting. So as this is our first, may I please ask that we stand for 1 minute in memory of Her Majesty, please. Right, so continue. As I said, I'm Graham Pass, Chairman of the committee. Other members of the committee present are Councillors Linden, McKinnon, Mays, Somner, Stewart, and last but by no means least, Woodhams. The following officers are in attendance to advise and support the meeting, and indeed me. Kim Marr, our solicitor, Bob Dray, our team leader, and that'll do. All right, team leader at the moment. Emma Nutchie, our principal planning officer. Gemma Kirk, a senior planning officer. Sissy Yang, another senior planning officer. Gareth Dowding on Zoom for principal engineer, traffic and road safety. Sadie Owen, the clerk even, and Tom Dunn, who is looking after the Zoom and the technology for us. So before we start proceedings, I'd like to explain that tonight's meeting is being held both over Zoom and with councillors present in the council chamber. Although there are no longer any formal restrictions regarding COVID, the council is continuing to adhere to safe working arrangements. The meeting is being live streamed over YouTube, so members of the public are able to follow proceedings or indeed join in if they're not here in person. Please can I ask everyone present in the chamber to make sure you do switch on your microphones when invited to speak and to speak directly into them. Those of you who have come to make representations, you will find on the dais there a little box with a microphone on it, and the right-hand button, one with a little figure on it, is the one you press, and it should illuminate then the button for you to make your presentation. When invited to do so, you have up to 5 minutes, which is timed very strictly. I'll give you any guidance and advice on timing, like half time, minute to go, or whatever. But please remain in position then for any councillors to ask you questions. You okay? It's okay. If you need to escape. So if we hear the evacuation alarm this evening, we must leave the building immediately. Please proceed via a safe emergency exit route, probably that one there, and follow any instructions given by the officers. The assembly point's in the car park of the Dolphin pub. If the lockdown alarm sounds, we will remain seated and await instructions from officers, and we will adjourn the meeting until such time as it is safe to proceed. Do members have any questions about the way in which this meeting will be conducted? I think we're all used to that now. So without further ado, item 1 on the agenda, do we have any apologies, please, Sadie?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we've got apologies from Councillor Alan Law, and Councillor Joe Stewart is in attendance as his substitute. We also have apologies from Councillor Alan McCrow and Jeremy Cotton.
Thank you indeed. Members, minutes of the meeting which we held on the 24th of August.
Mr. Chairman.
That was very quick. Are there any comments, or may I sign them as a true and correct record? Please raise your hands. Thank you. Thank you. Members, declarations of interest. Any to declare? Right. In that, oh, Councillor Mays.
I know the Stangs quite well. Sorry, could you use your...
Yes, microphone, please.
Yeah, I know the Stangs quite well. That's with regard to the wellness centre in Nightingale Lane. But I will be using my usual care in what I say and how I vote.
So it's not a prejudicial, it's more of a personal interest. And as a busy ward councillor, you know everyone in your ward, as we all do. Okay, thank you for that. Before I ask for the first item, which is indeed, which is land to the north and west of Glebe End, accessed by Short Heath Lane, Sullumstead, I make a big point of saying at site visits, you've all heard me, that you must register your name by 4 o'clock on the Tuesday. I'm always saying 4:05 is too late. Well, a gentleman who objected to this application did register. Then, of course, we cancelled the meeting. And I think because of being away or whatever, he did not re-register, thinking that he's registered once. So I would ask for a vote to be taken. I would propose that we suspend standing orders to allow that gentleman up to 5 minutes. I believe he is on Zoom. Those in favour, please show. That's everybody. So when it comes to, his name is Peter James, we will allow him to speak on Zoom. And Tom, I will ask you at the appropriate time to bring him on the screen for us. So, as I said, we're coming to that application now in Sullumstead in Reading. And I could ask Sissy Yang, please, to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, I'm just waiting for the screen to be shared. I think it's fine. Thank you. Good evening. The first item on the agenda is for application 21/03260/COMIND. It is a site at north and west of Glebe End, accessed by Short Heath Lane in Sullumstead. The proposal is for change of use of agricultural land to equestrian with stable yard, menage, and associated access. And there are 4 mobile field shelters and mobile stable. The reason for committee is we have received 13 objections, and the recommendation is for approval subject to conditions. As you can see on the location plan, the site is in a rural area in East Kennet Valley, and the application site is located at south side of Short Heath Lane and west side of Hollybush Lane. And there are residential properties located on the west and southeast area of the site. The proposal involves a menage with stable yard at northwest side of the application site. And there will also be a new car access from Short Heath Lane. The proposed stable, the menage would contain 16 stables for horses with ancillary use and storage. The scale would be about 30 meters wide and 18 meters deep, 2.2 meters to the eaves and 3 meters in height. This drawing shows where the mobile stables and mobile field shelters will be. And they will be at different locations in summer and winter. These are the photos of the mobile shelters on site. And this is a photo taken for the view from Short Heath Lane. And this is a view from Holybush Lane. And another photo of the site. So the objections we have received are mainly on the grounds of impact on character of the area, highway, trees, ecology, and residential amenity. There's also a concern raised about the use of the equestrian, and the applicant has confirmed that it will be used as private use, and this will be secured via condition 16, private use only. In terms of the key issues assessed for the application, the first one is the principle of the proposal. It is considered that it will be compliant with the policy CS12 and ENV 29, and a detailed assessment is set out in the committee report. In terms of design and amenity, we consider that they will be acceptable due to the scale and the location of the proposal being in the middle of large open space and overall design. In terms of highway ecology and tree issues, Council's highway ecology and tree officers were consulted, and the applicant submitted amended information and additional information during the course of the application, following officers' advice. And the key changes include reallocation, the new car access, and the further 5 meter setback for the parking space. And the new information was assessed by the consultees, and they raised no objections. So to conclude, it is considered that the proposal is recommended to approval, subject to conditions. And finally, there are no updates and further correspondence as set out in the update report. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Members, as always, if you have questions, please just make a note of them. We will come to ask our planning officer those questions if they're not answered by those making representations. But before I do ask for that, I'm just wondering, Mr. Dowding, is there anything you wish to add at this point from a highways perspective?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, there isn't anything to add at this point, but obviously if there are any questions, I'm more willing to answer them.
Perfect. Thank you very much. In that case, Tom, if you could please invite Mr. James into the Zoom, the virtual room. And
Mr. Chairman, Mr. James is now in the virtual room.
right, Mr. James, can you hear us? Mr. James, if you are there, you are muted. Could you perhaps unmute and possibly turn your video on? Oh, we see you, and
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. Can you hear
Thank you,
us?
Mr. Chairman.
Good evening.
First, thank you.
I don't know if you heard what I was saying to start with. I'll just recap for your benefit. You have up to 5 minutes to make your points. Do you need any assistance with timekeeping?
No, sir.
Good, good. But after you finish, please stay on the screen. Members may have questions and they can ask you those over and above the 5 minutes that you have. So your time will start when you start talking.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak at this meeting. Our primary concerns of a number of residents are simply the size of the development. It is 16 stables, a large menage, and at least 4 temporary shelters which will be moving. Personally, I find it difficult to believe that this is for anything other than commercial use. And interestingly enough, if you look on the Google map, you will see that the area has now been named as Oakdown Fields as a Google business place, which is really quite strange. We are worried about sort of the noise and light. Certainly if there is a menage, there's likely to be lighting at night. Quite a few vehicles for looking after stables for 16 plus horses, and the movements on the road. Arrivals, tends to get quite busy there already at weekends. We've counted up to 8 or 9 horses already. I imagine that's going to at least double. And the area between those roads has always been regarded as a buffer zone between the parishes of Salhampstead Abbots and Ufton Nervet. And in a 1993 rejection appeal by the government of a golf course there, it said that this is a natural area formed as part of a buffer zone between the communities. This is going to take a major development to the middle of that buffer zone. So in summary, we're concerned about the size of the development and the disruption it is likely to have on traffic, lights, and local wildlife. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you, Mr. James. Members, any questions for the objector? If you could use your Zoom hands to indicate if you do. It looks like we're going to let you off lightly, Mr. James, but
thank you.
You may continue listening to us on YouTube, as I'm sure you're aware. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
We have no supporters. We do have the applicant, Mrs. Amanda Cockingham, here. Mrs. Cockingham, please come to the dais. And again, you have up to 5 minutes, but please remain there. Have you found the right button?
Sorry, I'm very nervous. So.
Oh, don't be nervous.
I am.
No, do not be nervous. In your own time, but timing is strict. Can I help you at all?
Yeah, can you tell me when I've got a minute left? That would be fab.
Okay, right, we'll do that.
Right.
Deep breath and off you go.
Thank you. I just quickly want to say the reason we dropped a Google Maps pin was for delivery, because there's no address there. So for getting like fence posts and things like that delivered, it was very hard when we were trying to describe where they were. So that's why there's a Oakdown Fields on Google Maps. Lighting is already covered by condition 8. We're not allowed to put any exterior lighting in without having it approved first. So that hopefully will set Mr. James' mind at rest. So thank you for the opportunity to speak. I have read through the very detailed report, and it seems to cover and address most of the issues brought up by the objections, so I won't cover those again. What I would, however, like to ask about is the conditions section of the report, because a lot of them seem to be preconditions to commencing work, and it requires no less than 8 further plans to be submitted and approved by the LPA before we can start work. And given the already lengthy delay beyond the council set determination date in April, we're just a bit, can we have some reassurance that we won't encounter another 10-month delay in the signing off of any preconditions plans required? Although it does seem that most of these conditions are irrelevant or not applicable to our plans, and the informative section and the agreed conditions in other sections already cover the relevant points. 1 and 2 are fine, but 3, there's a whole section about a construction method statement, and this reads as a set of standard conditions put on a major development such as a housing estate, and doesn't seem to be applicable to our planned development, you know, some stables at all. It's described earlier in the report as modest in scale. For instance, section E stipulates the erection and maintenance of security hoarding, including decorative displays and or facilities for public viewing. And this surely isn't applicable to what we're doing, as you know, from the plans and the site visit. It'll consist of laying a concrete base, which is going to be carried out by a local farming contractor. The machinery used will be a digger and possibly a tractor, isn't decided yet. It'll arrive each day, not stored on site. The materials will be delivered as they're used, because basically it's some hardcore and then a concrete pour. And then the stables will arrive as prefabricated wooden panels, which will be bolted in place on site. There may be a small amount of finishing carpentry work needed. As you've seen, there's plenty of space to park inside the gate, which is already in place. So it seems to make most of that irrelevant. You know, it mentions demolition. Well, there, you know, a plan for that, but there isn't anything to be demolished. And sections J and K of that are already covered in condition 11, which are about the construction times allowed. Conditions 4 and 5 are about trees and ecology and require more plans to be put in place for those, but they're already covered by the additions that Sissy mentioned, the additional conditions put in place by the Ecology and Trees Officer. Section 6 requires a detailed landscaping plan, but as you know from your site visit, that there isn't going to be any additional landscaping. We're putting stables on the ground, and you've already got the elevations and the drawings of all of those. So it's not that I don't want to do this, I just don't understand what it is. And it seems to be because it's been designated as a major commercial and industrial application, which already Sissy's mentioned, it's for private use and there's a condition that makes it such. Again, 7 requires a biodiversity mitigation enhancement plan, which is already covered by ecology. I'm happy, we're happy to submit a drainage plan. I absolutely understand the need for that, whatever you're building, but again, would just like a bit of reassurance that, it won't take months and months for us to put that in and then have it signed off before we can begin work, because we're really keen to not damage the land any more than necessary.
Remaining.
So we want to get the work done before winter sets in, and obviously we need somewhere for our horses to live in winter. 13 to 16 are also fine, they're relevant, although 15's manure disposal, and that was already covered in the application. I can send it in again, but it's already in there. So if the committee do decide to follow the LPA's recommendation to approve the application, we just ask that the condition sections are reviewed and reflect the issues that are relevant to our application, rather than set of general conditions that normally be applied to a large scale, major commercial and industrial development. So that's the only thing that I'd ask, is that you can have a look at those and check they are relevant to what we're doing. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Well in time. Members, officers can address those points that Mrs. Cottingham made, but do you have any questions for her yourself? I saw Councillor Stewart does, so Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. I think you spoke really well, actually. So you didn't appear nervous at all. And I know it can be sort of, a bit daunting standing in front of us. But my questions, I know very little about horses. I've been on one a couple of times in my life and probably should never do it again. Could you describe to me or explain to me what the usage of the menage will be? So if there seems to have been some comments about it'll be, used at night and there'll be lights you've already talked about, but how do you envisage them?
So most people who have stables want someone to ride their horses, basically. And at the moment, we hack. Now, one of the concerns that a lot of the local residents have said is they don't want horses on the road. So clearly, if we're not allowed to ride them on the road, which we are allowed to, but, I understand concerns, then we need somewhere secure to exercise them. I'm also, for my sins, a show jumper. So you need a surface that you can do jumping on, particularly, for instance, this summer, it was so dry that you couldn't ride your horse in the field because the ground was just too hard, you'd damage your horse's legs. And again, in winter, if you're riding your horse riding around in a particular area, it'll get really muddy and churned up. So the purpose of the menage is that you have a surface, and it's made of wax sand. So it's basically just a sandy surface that's well drained and fenced, so that if you fall off, your horse doesn't career off into the woods, and hopefully you have a soft landing. And so that's the purpose of menage. Most horse yards have somewhere you can exercise your horses without riding out, and that's not subject to the sort of weather and ground conditions.
So more sort of contained.
Yeah.
Is it right if I ask another?
Yeah.
So also there is so I've read all of the comments that have been put onto the planning portal, and there has been mention of 16 horses. Surely that's more than enough for personal use.
Yes, I would agree.
Can you tell me what the use is actually going to be?
Okay, so we at the moment we've got 9 horses there. Several of them are retired horses because you collect them, and 4 of them are over 20, and you can't just throw them in the bin when you finish with them, so they end up as pets. But even though they're pets, they still need a lot of space and somewhere to live when it's rainy and snowy. My daughter has 3 horses. One is 2 horses she competes on. She's got one that's broken at the moment, but she's hoping it won't be broken forever, because horses have a habit of doing that. And she's got a young one that's 3 and she's just broken in. So she's hoping that by the time her older ones are too old to compete, she can compete on those. Her partner who lives with her also has a horse that's with us. My grandson rides, he's got a pony, although that pony is pretty much outgrown now, so we'll be looking to get him a slightly bigger one. And my other daughter, I've got 3 grown-up daughters, my other daughter also rides, and at the moment she shares my horse with me, but she'd quite like to get her own horse as well. So yeah, basically you just end up collecting them really. The reason for having the 16 stables, we initially looked at a design with only 12 stables, but the site is very windy, as we found out in Storm Eunice when the field shelters we had put up all blew down and we had to rebuild them because, as you know, because they're mobile, they're not allowed to be connected to the ground, and so the design of 16 stables meant we could get it in a square yard. If you don't have enough, you can't get them square, and it meant we could put all the storage in that square, and then things like wheelbarrows and forks and everything will be inside the square, so it would just be a whole lot tidier.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Councillor Mays.
Thank you, Chair. Mrs. Cottingham.
Yes.
A quick one. In the document, we've got the agenda. It says that the main stable is on skids.
So did you
have...
came on the site visit, didn't you?
Yes.
Yes.
Are you going to move it?
We have already moved it once, yeah, because it's a mobile stable.
No, the new one.
Oh, the new one? No.
It's a permanent structure.
The stable
Yes.
block is a permanent structure.
Course,
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
answers my question. Thank you.
Oh yeah.
Anything else?
No, you can't ask him.
No. Is she going to tell me anything about the stable?
No, she's only allowed to answer questions, Councillor
So I
Mays.
know that.
So it's questions, members. Any more? Mrs. Cottingham, thank you very much.
Thank you.
In that case, we come to the ward member, Councillor McKinnon.
Hello, Chairman. Hello, colleagues.
I know it's.
Sorry.
Thank you.
As I usually say at this stage, there's not much point in me restating the applicant's case and the objector's case. They've done that quite nicely, and I would quite like to take part in the debate and vote, having not made up my mind. So I've got nothing to add at this stage, Chairman.
Okay, fair enough. So before we enter that debate, members, are there any questions for our officers? You've got Miss Yang and Bob here who could answer any of the questions that may have been raised that you're concerned about. Councillor Sumner.
Chairman, thank you. Just for clarity, more than anything else, looking at previous applications that have been put through for this site, I note that there's already been a change of use from agriculture to private grazing in '97. I just want to make sure that that isn't going to cause any hiccups for this application.
Chairman, no, it's no, given it wouldn't do. I can't think of any in terms of. It's a short answer.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Mr. Dre, if you would, the applicant did list a number of issues. Perhaps you could assist us in determining this application by making some observations and comments to guide us.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, sure. Yeah, obviously we're key members to keep conditions to the bare minimum necessary to make a development acceptable. And it's fair, there are a fair number here. We wouldn't be recommending them if we didn't consider them necessary to make the development acceptable. Just because there's a lot of them doesn't necessarily mean that it's a lot of work to achieve. So, for example, the construction method statement is there to ensure that when the construction has been carried out, that the works are done off-road. For example, there's parking areas available, that kind of thing. It's looking at preventing a disturbance to the local community during construction. You've heard Mrs. Cottingham say some of the measures that could be done, and so that's the kind of thing that could feature in a construction method statement. The next one to do with construction environmental management plan is often very much the same kind of document. Often they are the same document, but it is from an ecology perspective. So the reason we do them as different conditions is because we've got to make sure they're precise and enforceable. And so those terms, it's important that we have them separate in that respect. But when it comes to actually discharging those details, it's going to be proportionate to what's there. I mean, if it's a straightforward case, if we can make a parking area available on the land we've got, then that ticks the box, for example. So it may look wordy, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's what we need in order to discharge it. I can't comment on the tree protection. The tree officers requested it on that basis. What I can say is we can look at that before we issue the decision, and if there is a flexibility in that trigger, we can make minor amendments under delegated authority, but that is how it's been presented, but we'll double check that. Again, I think that comment applies throughout really. It's about proportionality when it comes to discharging it, but if you have any specific questions on any individual question, I'll happily answer.
Right, well, we're still on questions to officers. Are there any further ones? Or I shall be asking who wishes to start the debate. Looking for hands, come on. Someone has to. I did say that. Councillor Somner, the brave man to start it all off. Off you go.
No, never one to run away fast enough, Chairman, I think. I suppose the biggest concern I had when I was reading through the paperwork on this one was the size and the use. Now, I and my family have been in and around friends and family with horses for a good number of years, and I do appreciate the size of the operation and the need that you've got for it, because they don't come cheap and they don't come easy on the requirement. I think one of the comments that was noted, and Councillor Stewart touched on it earlier on, is with regards to the use. Condition 16 wasn't in the original pack that came out. So it wasn't initially stated as private use only. And one of the letters of support notes very nicely that there's an ongoing and well-received community use. For me, that is something that I think is beneficial to the wider area. And it will be sad in some ways to lose that ability for community use. But we have in front of us what we have, as we always say. I don't regard this as being a major development. I know it's a sizable building because it's a stable block and because of the way that it's shaped and what's required. I don't regard it to be a major development. In some of the, if you look at some of the major developments that we've going on across the district, 30, 50, 150, 1,500 houses, whatever it might be, that's a major development to me. I think this is a necessary operational requirement. So I'm already very heavily leaning towards recommendation to support officer's recommendation, Chairman, but I'll back out and let somebody else have a few words.
Well, let's see if anyone agrees or disagrees. Who's going to add to that? I saw a hand go up, then it went down. Councillor Linden.
Yes, Chairman, I would agree with Councillor Sumner's view on it, as I've been to the site visit as such. And I'd like to propose officers' recommendations.
I see your hand up, Councillor McKinnon, but does that find a seconder? Councillor Somner, right. So we have a proposal which is seconded. That doesn't preclude debate. Councillor McKinnon.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I noted Mrs. Cottingham's comments on the conditions, and I was very pleased to hear Bob's response to those. That's put my mind at rest with the conditions to some degree. I also listened to Mr. James's objections, and I sympathise with him to an extent about worries about horses on the roads and the potential commercial nature of the development. But there is a quite clear condition now in the pack against that. And I really don't see any planning reason to refuse this development. So I'm in agreement with Councillor Sumner on that.
Okay, Councillor Stewart, the last word before we go to the vote.
I'm probably not going to say anything different, to be perfectly honest. Councillor McKinnon said it before I could get there.
Okay, well, in that case, unless anyone dissents, can I ask for a show of hands, physical hands in front of the screen so we can see, those in favour of the proposal which is for conditional permission as with the officer's recommendation, please show. That's unanimous. Conditional permission is granted. So we now come to application 2. Oh, Ms. Yang, if you wish to leave us, you are welcome to. Well, you can all stay if you wish. If you wish to stay, you're very welcome. So we come now to item number 2 on the agenda, which is 17 Clifton House, Reading Road in Pangbourne. And Emma Nucci, please would you give us the presentation for it?
Okay, thank you, Chairman. The second item on the agenda this evening is for 13 flats and reconfiguration of the car parking and demolition of an existing flat roof building at number 17 Clifton House, Reading Road in Pangbourne. The application is recommended for approval subject to conditions and the completion of a legal agreement. The application site is centrally situated within Pangbourne, and it comprises an irregular shaped parcel of land which is to the rear of some existing or the existing frontage of shops and businesses which fronts Reading Road, and to the north we've got the main railway line. So you can see from the location plan that there are a number of surrounding businesses. To the east are the residential properties of Pangbourne Place. And in the top right-hand corner, you'll see there's a short terrace of 3 properties which back onto the site, and they back onto a flat roof structure which is to be removed as part of the application. This is the frontage, so you can see the location within Pangbourne. The site is also partly within the conservation area. Its main impact in that regard is on the setting of the conservation area and views of the conservation area. You can see on the left-hand side, we've got the location plan with the outline of the site in red. And on the right-hand side of the screen, we've got the edge of the conservation area, which is marked by the orange line. So if you take the point where the orange line meets Reading Road and travel northwards, you'll see actually that lines up with the edge of the application site. And the application site then goes further north. To the left, you've got the building to be removed. And then ahead of that, you've got the railway line. So that sort of really gives you a feel for the site and its location in relation to the conservation area. The application, as I say, is for 13 flats. It will comprise a mix of 2 and 1 bedroom units. And the flats are arranged within 2 buildings. So 12 of the units are in the main block, which is called Block A, which is at the back of the site. Sort of a U-shaped building. And then we've got Block B, which is a flat above some car parking. On this drawing here, you can see more clearly the neighbouring properties to the east. So you've got numbers 1 to 3 Pangbourne Place. And at the moment, the rear gardens of those properties is marked by the flat roof structure that we saw on site, which was a former physiotherapy building, and it's to be removed as part of the application. And I'm aware that some of the occupiers of those properties will be speaking this evening. During the site visit, we noted that the building currently marks the rear boundary of those properties. So they have a sort of 3-metre wall, effectively, at the end of that building, forming their back garden. And that has been looked at following the site visit with the applicant, and the applicant's shown a willingness to reconsider the boundary treatment in relation to that part of the site. And we've got a condition, condition 26, to deal with that matter. Further south, you can see, or going to the east, but further south near Reading Road, there are properties along that boundary. And then to the south, we've got the commercial buildings on Reading Road. There are also 2 sort of more distinct areas of parking within the development. You've got West Car Park and you've got East Car Park. Now, West Car Park can be seen in this photo. It's the area sort of behind the building that's in front of you in the photo. And that's going to be providing parking for existing businesses within Pangbourne. So at the moment, the site is largely used for car parking by businesses. The site's managed by a management company, and a number of businesses like lease parking spaces. So it's not a public car park at all. It's just a private use of the land at the moment. And those businesses and their car parking needs have been accounted for within the development. This is a view of the site from Reading Road. And the buildings in the photo at the moment are to be retained. And the new building will actually be directly in front of you. So this view now from Reading Road will change, and you will actually see the reconfigured parking and the new flats, which will sort of form an end point, blocking some of the views of the railway gantry. These are some elevations we have of the building. This is the south front elevation, as I say, will be that view that you would see from the road, not in its entirety because it will be obscured by some of the existing buildings, but that gives you an idea of the scale of the structure. To the left of that building is a wing that comes forward, and that's also at 3 stories, but slightly set down. And then on the right-hand side, you've just got a single-story element with some small dormers, which wraps around that edge of the site. This is the elevations of the back of the building. And again, I referred to Block B, which contains 1 flat with parking underneath. And we've got the elevation here to give you an idea of the scale of that structure. The application's accompanied by a parking plan. There's no highways objections to the scheme in terms of access design or car parking. In terms of the site history, there has been planning permission granted for 9 buildings on 9 flats on the site previously. You'll see reference to that in the committee report. This is just a view to show you the approved elevation and what's now proposed. So this application follows a similar design approach, but it does provide for 4 extra units, and they're largely accommodated within the roof by the dormers in both the main building, and as you can see on the wing to the right, there is some flat accommodation in the roof. That is also a copy of the approved layout. So again, you can see the similarities in the design. That application is still extant, but it does need to be implemented early next year. As you'll have seen from the report, there are no sort of technical objections from statutory consultees, and a number of conditions have been requested. The main objection, we had 4 objections from local residents, and they all related to the boundary treatments. And this matter, as I say, has been subject to further discussion since the site visit with the applicant, and condition 26 has been added to address that issue. And so following a detailed assessment of the application, it is recommended for approval as per the conditions set out in the committee report. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, thank you, Ms. Nucci. Tom, we have no parish council representative wishing to speak. We have 2 objectors. Tom, could you please advise me when Miss O'Keefe and Mr. Billings? I'm sorry? No. You can come in there. Sorry. Right, Mr. Billing and Miss O'Keefe, can you hear us?
Yes, it's Mags O'Keefe here. I can hear you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. apologies, my video seems to have a problem with it.
It's not a problem, don't worry. Mr. Billing, can you hear us?
That's it. Hello, yes, thank you very much. Yes, I can. Yes.
Can we see you perhaps if you could turn your video on?
That's an interesting question.
I thought it might.
Hang on. Start a video. Yeah. There might be a chance. Oh yes.
Brilliant. I saw you a little help there, but hey, I'm up for that. Don't worry. I need help occasionally.
That was a technical director.
Right. Now, the fact that there are two of you doesn't mean you get 5 minutes each. You have 5 minutes to share. So can I timekeeping? We are very strict on timekeeping in the interest of fairness. But once you've made your presentation, one or both of you can split the time. It's entirely up to you. But please remain on the screen for any questions members may have.
Okay. Well, thanks for letting us try and speak. No problem with the. For
example.
Sorry.
I'll tell you when it's half time.
Okay. Now, just very quick. It's very quick. No problem with the plans. We've got this section 26, which I have to say the only thing is that we want replacement of the wall with but I have to say I haven't seen section 26, so I don't know what it actually says. Emma might be able to elucidate a bit later on. So long as it's replacement with there's only one other question or concern that I picked up in the documentation, and that was in the amenity thing. The inference is that they don't have to do the wall until just prior to occupation of the building. Now, as soon as that derelict building or disused building is demolished, then there is no boundary, there is no wall. So realistically, in our view, the wall needs to be rebuilt as soon as they demolish that building, not waiting until occupation of the final building. Otherwise, you're just looking out with no boundary, no security, just watching a building site, surely. So that was the only concern that we have, really. Replace with and straight away as soon as they demolish the existing building.
Okay. Mr. O'Keefe, you have about 2.5 minutes left if you wish, 3.5 minutes left.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to reinforce Les's point, we don't have any objection to the development going ahead. It looks like a very handsome development, as I have said. I appreciate that in the report it said that the established plants that have been in my garden for 19 years didn't bear any weight, but just to reinforce on the planning decision. But again, I will lose those if something isn't put up straight away, and that again we actually have that put up after the wall is put down, not a period of time thereafter. So that's our only request. The guys have been around here, they've been very cooperative, but it was just to reinforce that point today, is all I wanted my point to be made. Thank you very much.
Okay, I was going to claim chairman's privilege and ask the first question. Was at the site visit, the agent who was there did seem to be very cooperative and said he'd talk to you. Members, do you have any questions for the objectors? No, we don't seem to have any, but your points have been made and thank you very much indeed. We have no supporters wishing to speak, but we have, I believe he's the agent, Mr. Adrian Keel on Zoom. Tom, if you could advise, please, when Mr. Keel is on the screen.
Mr. Keel is in the room, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Keel, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Mr. Keel, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
You're a bit distant, but we can indeed hear you fairly clearly. Could we see you as well, perhaps? There we go. No, nearly. Ah, perfect. Right, Mr. Keel, up to 5, welcome. You have up to 5 minutes. Can I assist you with any timekeeping?
Yes, if you could let me know when I've got 1 minute to go, that'd be very helpful. Thank you.
Pleasure. Please remain on the screen for any questions members may have after you finish speaking. The time is yours.
Good evening and thank you. We've read the officer's report and welcome the recommendation to approve. We've worked with your offices initially with the pre-application consultation and subsequently the statutory consultee responses, including the Parish Council. In response, we've undertaken several additional reports, including highways, arboriculture, zero carbon energy and surface water drainage. These reports have helped to inform the proposed conditions. The main entrance to the site is the gap between buildings on the Reading Road. This provides a view from the Reading Road across a tarmac car park that is subdivided by a chain link fencing. At the far end is a disused flat roof building, beyond which is the elevated railway line with its unsightly electrification gantries. The proposed scheme will transform this view by creating an attractive mews courtyard with a landscaped amenity area and seating for residents. The proposed flats are of a traditional design to tie in with the adjoining buildings. They will form a backdrop that will obscure the view of the railway line. Block A is similar to the design of the previously approved scheme for 9 units. It includes a lift and the entrance to the top unit is on the 2nd floor. The flats are orientated with their habitable rooms facing south to benefit from the sunny aspect, and they overlook the courtyard garden. To the north are non-habitable rooms and corridors that overlook the railway embankment. The north-facing windows allow natural light into the corridor that runs along the back of the flats and helps to screen the habitable rooms from the railway. By introducing 13 flats into the site, the surveillance and security of the site will be improved. 4 of the flats are to be affordable shared ownership. Block B is a single 2-bedroom flat over 4 parking spaces. It replicates the scale and form of 17 Reading Road, and together with Block A and the retained cherry tree, it helps to create a series of linked courtyard spaces. The new flats have a scale and grain that is intended to complement the retained and surrounding buildings to form an intimate character of the site. The existing car park has 99 marked spaces, but many of them are substandard in terms of size and geometry. The existing spaces are allocated to commercial tenants of Pangbourne Beaver Properties and also to other businesses within the village, but they are not in regular daily use. Our surveys and your highways officers confirm that the current demand is for a maximum of 60 commercial spaces. 15 of the proposed spaces are reserved for the 13 flats, and the total number of parking spaces on the site is 79. The commercial spaces will be allocated on a pool basis rather than individually allocated as they are at present. And the segregation of the east and west car parks will be retained to maintain the security of the site, but with an emergency gate between the two for fire access. Bike and bin stores are integrated into the eastern wing of Block A so that they are accessible but not obtrusive. In response to comments from your tree officer, we've revised the car parking layout to retain a mature cherry tree that will enhance the setting of the car park. We've already heard regarding the concerns of neighbours at 1 to 3 Pangbourne Place.
1 minute remaining.
We've met with the neighbours and have agreed a strategy to provide a replacement wall that is acceptable to them. Condition 26 has been included to address their concern, and we will take on the point that they do not want the site to be left open, and that can be accommodated. In conclusion, we believe that this proposed mixed development will result in a considerable improvement to this important site in the centre of the village. The scheme has been modified in response to the issues that have been raised by your officers and local people, and we believe it will result in a significant improvement and enhancement to the conservation area. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Mr. Keel. In fact, you did answer the one question I would have asked at the site visit. That wall is obviously of vital importance to the people backing onto it, the objectors who spoke. We left it in your capable hands to have negotiations with them. You heard what they said. So, members, do you have any questions for Mr. Keel? We're letting everybody off lightly this evening, aren't we? Thank you, Mr. Keel. Do we have the ward member, Gareth Hurley, Councillor Hurley, in the room? We don't. Right. In that case, members, any questions for officers, please, at this stage? Bearing in mind, if there are highways ones, we have Mr. Dowding here to answer any that you may have. Councillor Linden, yeah, Councillor Linden.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it's on condition 26. I don't seem to have it on my paperwork, so I don't know, Emma, if you just want to give me a brief update of what condition 26 is.
Could you actually read it out? I think if someone's brought the previous agenda of the meeting that we cancelled, I believe this has been added since then on the new agenda. Could you just read it out what condition 26 is, please?
Thank you, Chairman. You're
absolutely... Tracy it at least.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. You're absolutely right. It wasn't on the original agenda, so that may be why you don't have it. And so condition 26, I'll read it in its entirety. Details of boundary treatment. The dwellings hereby approved shall not be occupied until details of the proposed boundary treatments to the rear of numbers 1 to 3 Pangbourne Place have been submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. The approved boundary treatment shall thereafter be installed in accordance with the approved details prior to occupation of the dwellings. This condition shall apply irrespective of the details shown in the application documents. So it's essentially saying that the new flat shall not be occupied until the new fencing has been installed along that rear boundary, and that fencing needs to be agreed in terms of its style and design with the local planning authority. And
that's really helpful. Thank you.
So
and I know what you're going to say, Councillor Linden. I'm ahead of you. I'm going to ask Mr. Dre if he could just add something to that at this time, which may assist us.
Thank you, Chairman. So the condition as drafted, the trigger is occupation, which is the usual trigger we would apply for boundary treatments. Hearing the concerns of the residents, they obviously want that as soon as the demolition takes place. I wouldn't want to specify that exactly in a condition because we can't place an unreasonable burden on the developer and we don't know how the programme of construction takes place, but they've clearly shown willingness. So what we could do is change it to a pre-commencement condition, so saying no development until you agree the details, but within that detail, tell us the programme, the order in which you'll do it and a timescale for how quickly afterwards. So hopefully we achieve the same end. I just don't want to stipulate it hard and fast in the condition and place an unreasonable burden that can't be achieved.
So, Chairman.
Does that help, Councillor Linden?
Yeah, so in other words, this will protect those plants which are emotional and you know, needs of a late mother.
In planning, we can obviously only control what the boundary treatment is, and I think that's the best we can do through the planning permission.
Thank you.
I'm sure the point was well made, Councillor Linden, as indeed it was at the site visit. And I'm sure the developer would take those wishes into account. Councillor Mays.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. This is for Emma, I think, really. Emma, the balustrade fencing on the railway line, is that at the bottom of the embankment or at the top?
So that fencing is at the bottom of
one that's owned by Network Rail.
So yes, that's right, and that is being retained.
That's at the bottom of the embankment.
Yes, so it's at the bottom, yeah, at the bottom of the slope, so it's site level, not at the train line level.
So the trees that are being cut back so that they don't overhang the site. They're wholly in Network Rail's land.
That's right, yes. So
Okay.
they're not removing any trees, they are purely
No.
trimming them.
Good, okay. So another question. Oh yes, my other question, again, it wasn't mentioned by the applicant. And it comes from the heat source pump way of heating. Is that that's gonna heat the new blocks, apparently?
That's correct. So there are some.
Do they have to pay for that? Or is it the heating done separate?
No, that is secured as part of the development. So the developer will install that into the fabric of the building.
And will there be a charge by the occupants?
I don't know how it is managed, but it will be in place so that it's delivered from the outset and will go towards their contribution to a sustainable development.
With respect, that isn't a planning matter.
What about solar panels? Is that in a planning matter?
So the delivery of the solar panels is because policy CS15 requires new development to reduce carbon emissions, and the way that the developer proposes to meet the requirements of the policy is to provide solar panels on the building.
So does the electricity generated, does that reduce the occupants' energy bill, or does that just go to in the pot of funds that the developer makes?
I believe it's to power the building itself. So
is it shared out amongst all the occupants?
Yes, it would feed into the building. How it's distributed, I don't know, but it's to power the building going forward, and therefore reducing a need for energy from the grid.
And the balance of energy required by the occupants would be paid for from the grid, presumably.
Councillor Mays, we do cover the visual aspects of things such as solar panels. We don't get involved with who pays for what, and that is not a planning matter. So I'm sorry, I'm going to have to really stop that line of questioning, unless officers tell me I'm wrong.
Chairman, the provision, as Emma says, and the retention is a relevant planning consideration because it's contributing to the reduction of climate change. But the same way with any rental agreement, that doesn't come within our.
So it's in the lease or the ownership agreement. Okay.
Like the fitting out of the building, for example.
Make my point.
All right, Councillor Somner.
Happy to move on to debate, Chairman, if that's okay.
I don't see any other questions. You're starting it again, are you? You know where I'm going to look every time now, don't you? Right, Councillor Somner, please. Oh, no, Mr. Dowdy, you don't want to add anything, do you? That's not a threat. I mean,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anything before we start or not?
No, I haven't got anything to add. Thank you.
Perfect. Councillor Somner.
He is at peace, Chairman. I'm actually quite encouraged by this application overall, to be honest with you. I think there's some really good work towards policy CS15, solar panels, as has been talked, and pumps, if we can get it in there as well. I think that's fantastic. It's not achieving complete net zero, but it's going a very, very long way towards it. And I think that should be encouraged by all applicant agents and developers, as we know. I think if we look at the views of those neighbouring, the objections are few in number and quite focused, and that is, as I understand it, well in hand, with a slight amendment to number 26 on the conditions. I think that is well catered for. And I think the only thing really that was brought up, as I can see from the ward member, was in regards to parking numbers. I mean, the plot itself is opposite a public car park. It's not exactly going to cause major harm, in my view. And I'm going to step straight in and say that I'm with those amendments. I'm very happy to propose, Chairman.
Okay, does that find a seconder? Oh, two or three of you. Councillor Stewart got there first. Right, we'll still continue with the debate. Councillor McKinnon.
Yes, thanks, Chairman. When it comes to net zero, I don't think we should let the perfect be the enemy of the good. It's a very good environmental development, and Councillor Sumner is exactly correct in what he says. I'm very encouraged at the attitude that the developer has shown to some of the objections that we heard. Those of us who were on the site visit would have been struck by that. So it's very pleasing. Not altogether guaranteed that this happens, but it's very pleasing the way that that's been dealt with. Again, I don't see any valid planning reasons to refuse given that. So yeah, it looks like I'm going to be supportive of this application.
Thank you indeed. Councillor Linda, you put your hand down, I think. Yes, you did. Any other debating points, or should we go straight to the vote? The proposal is for conditional permission as laid out in the agenda. Officers, do you wish to add anything first?
With the amendment of condition 26 to change the...
Well,
sorry, Mike.
So, can you hear me?
Oh, it is. Sorry. Yeah, go on.
All right. And to clarify, it was the amendment of condition 26 to make it a pre-commencement condition to include, and including with that details, a timetable for the implementation of the boundary treatment.
And indeed, subject to a 106
subject to the section 106. Yeah.
Right. So with all that taken on board, those in favour, please show. Again, unanimous. Conditional permission is granted. Shall we crack straight on or have 2 minutes off? I'm in your hands. Crack on. Right. Okay. We come to the third application, the final application, Man's Farm, Nightingale Lane, Mortimer. Gemma Kirk. Miss Kirk, please take us through your presentation.
Thank you, Chairman. This application seeks planning permission to convert an existing timber shed and replace the existing steel barn to create a wellness centre at Man's Farm, Nightingale Lane, Mortimer. The application is at committee because offers are recommending refusal, and it was called in by Councillor Bridgman to provide the committee an opportunity to debate the question of supporting the rural economy. Man's Farm is located to the northeast of Mortimer settlement and is accessed from Nightingale Lane. An existing tenancy farm business operates at Man's Farm. The Wellness Centre intends to provide an additional stream of income. As you can see from the location plan and block plan, the agricultural buildings, which are proposed for conversion, which are the two at the front of the site, belong to an existing farm complex. And the buildings that are proposed for conversion and replacement are no longer fit for modern agricultural purposes. This just shows the existing timber cart shed and the steel barn elevation and floor plans. And again, this is just the timber cart shed that is proposed to be converted. And this is the steel barn that will be replaced. The block plan shows that the replacement building will be in a similar position to the existing steel barn. Landscaping is proposed adjacent to the highway and also adjacent to the overflow car parking. Parking is indicated on the plan between an existing modern agricultural building and the proposed wellness centre, and there's also overflow parking to the south of the modern building. The elevations demonstrate that the replacement building will be of a similar design to the existing timber cart shed. You can see that the replacement cart shed will be of a similar height to the existing building, and you can see the curved extension that will link the existing building to the proposed building. The Wellness Centre will fall within Use Class ED, which is Indoor Sports, Recreation and Fitness, and Use Class EE, which is Medicine and Health Services. The floor plans indicate that there'll be a larger studio space, which is intended to accommodate 24 people, a smaller studio space, which is intended to accommodate 8 people, and 2 treatment rooms that could have a new client every hour. Services offered will be for contemporary and alternative medicines. The rooms will be used for both in-house treatments and hired to wellness practitioners for use. The centre is proposed to be operate between the hours of 7 to 9 on Monday to Friday, 8 to 6 on Saturday, and 10 to 4 on a Sunday. Mans Farm is located outside of the established settlement boundary where development is strictly controlled. However, it has been identified that the proposal will provide free part-time jobs, an additional revenue stream for existing farm business, and provide some benefits to the village of Mortimer by attracting visitors. Significant weight has been given to these economic benefits. However, due to the location outside of the settlement, there has also been a need to weigh both the economic benefits to the location outside the settlement boundary in the open countryside. I've provided a map on the screen which shows the accessibility of the site, and this is the key issue and the reason for refusal on this application. The Highway Authority advised that the location would not be easily accessible by sustainable transport modes, and therefore there would be an increase in motorised vehicles. Consideration was given to the rural roads, the availability of public transport, and the public right-of-way network. It was considered due to the nature of these unlit and no footways on the roads, and the location of the bus stop, which you can see on this map, is in the village of Mortimer, that it would be that it would not be conducive for cycling, walking, or travelling by bus. The proposed vehicle movements, as per the transport note and agreed with the highway officer, is 93 vehicle movements per day, and most of these would reasonably be carried out by private car, which the highway officer also advised would be most likely be deliberate trips. This would be contrary to both the council's local plan and national policy in terms of the use of sustainable transport, the location of town centre uses, supporting the rural economy uses, and the council's climate change emergency. Significant weight has also been attached to this. So in terms of character of the area, it is considered that the proposal would be acceptable in terms of impact on the rural character and the setting and the setting of the rural location and the non-designated heritage asset due to the scale of the built form, design and position within the existing agricultural complex. This is the view from the road, so you can see they're adjacent to the road. This is within the site, so this is the existing timber cart shed that will be converted. This is the steel barn that will be demolished. As you can see, they sit within that existing complex. And again, this is from Nightingale Lane. With regard to neighbouring and amenity, it was identified that there are 2 dwellings adjacent to the access. There would be some additional disturbance from movements in and out of the site for the wellness centre, but it was considered this would not result in an unacceptable impact, and operation hours could be controlled by use of a condition. So in terms of highway safety, the highway officer had no objections on the grounds of using the existing access, and parking was resolved as part of the application with an amended plan. However, as mentioned earlier, the highway officer has objected on the accessibility of the location in terms of the use proposed. And here on this map shows where the parking will go, and to the south of that will be of the modern building will be where the overflow parking will be. During the course of the application, objections were made originally by ecology and tree officers. However, these were withdrawn with the submission of an amended plan which showed the soft landscaping proposals. And then also mentioned in the report other matters which are recommended could be dealt with by condition. Just to go for the planning balance and conclusion. So significant weight has been given to the economic benefits of supporting a rural business. However, more weight has been applied to the inherently unsustainable location of this type of intensive use, which is considered to be inaccessible from the Highway Authority objections. This application has been recommended for refusal. An amended refusal reason is provided in the update report sheet to demonstrate the consideration of the public right-of-way network. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, thank you, Ms Kirk. As you mentioned highways on several occasions, I'm going to ask Mr Dowding if he wishes to add anything to your very full and excellent presentation.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. All I would like to add is the fact that potentially be looking at an increase of 90 car movements over what is already there on site, and considering the nature of the roads and the environment, we do consider that those 90 car movements are an unnecessary increase, and that's purely down to its rural location.
When you say 90, do you mean 90 a day or a week or a month?
Up to 90 a day.
Thank you. Right. I was being naughty there, asking a question, wasn't I? But hey, chairman's privilege. I'm going to let myself off. We will move on, therefore, to those wishing to make representations. We have a parish representative, Councillor Danisha Morsley. Tom, if you could let me know when Councillor Morsley is there, please.
Councillor Morsley is now in the room.
Thank you. Councillor Morsley, can you hear us? Councillor Morsley, you're on mute. Perhaps if you can hear us, if you could unmute, and we can see you now. Wonderful, but you're still muted.
Right, how about now?
That's better, that's perfect. Can you hear us all right?
We can, very well. Thank you, Councillor Pass.
Good, you're very welcome. Now you have up to 5 minutes. Can I assist you with any?
Give me a minute warning in case I get too verbose. Thank you.
I'll let you do that, but please remain thereafter.
I will.
For any questions, thank you.
So, Strathfield Waterville Parish Council, of whom I'm Chair of Planning Committee, supported this application when we first saw it, with one reservation. At that point, we thought there might not be enough parking. That has since been amended, and I would like to say that we now fully support this. There have been no local objections, so not a single. The two houses that the case officer mentioned as being possibly affected by being isolated are actually part of the farm complex, so presumably are happy to be affected. This sort of business on a farm very much supports, as most of the councillors will know, Strathfield Waterville has a neighbourhood plan, and we have a policy C6, which it very much supports, and we would very much prefer to see this sort of diversification on farms than something which is commercial or semi-commercial, industrial or sort of semi-industrial, which is more likely to make fumes or pollution or have other side issues. There's going to be no noise from this. In terms of its location, much has been made about the fact that it's down a rural road. Well, farms are, and farm diversification is always like that. I'm not sure where this sort of wealth centre could be, which actually the village would very much welcome. Somewhere in the documents, in the various reports that the officers have produced, I noticed some sort of doubt that there was a demand for it. Well, I can tell you the village would be very excited and very pleased. We currently have to drive 5 miles to get to yoga and similar sort of distances to go to many other things. So, if we're told we can't have services on our doorstep because it's not sustainable because you can't get there by foot, cycle or bus, well, then maybe somebody would provide us with some more bus services. We can't have anything if we have to meet those conditions. We won't be able to have any new services. There's no room in the middle of the village to provide those sort of services. The few small public rooms we have are fully booked 24/7 kind of thing. You can't find any room to run any of these sort of things. And certainly I think things like yoga, Pilates, exercise classes, there is a huge demand for. So I think it would be very welcomed by the village. And in terms of people in the village, we'd actually all be driving less. We'd have somewhere nearer, even if we couldn't walk there. And I think we would rather see a certain number of cars go down. I'd like to say, for those of you who didn't come on the site visit, Man's Farm is the farm nearest to the middle of our village. It's not out in some open bit of countryside. It is, yes, it's got fields around it, but it's the nearest farm we've got. So it's the best farm to have a service which the village might use rather than some kind of business which would be other businesses coming to in vans and trucks and things. You know, they might as well, those sort of things are better off away from the village, but this is something that the village would actually use. So I think it's the kind of diversification we will want to see. I think a lot of the village would want to be customers of it. And, you know, the village would like to say now that it strongly supports this. I was trying to, if you don't mind me looking, see if there's anything else I wrote down. I think that covers, you know, most of it. The impact of private cars. Well, if you live in a village without much public transport, you unfortunately have to accept that if you're to have any sort of services at all. So I would, you know, I would urge support for this, which I think is a very well thought out plan, good use of buildings. And as your report said, there weren't really any other objections. It's very sympathetic.
1 minute remaining.
I think it's very sympathetically located. It's not going to disturb anything in terms of neighbours. It is just this short piece of rural road that the access is, but you know, whatever they put there, we'll have to have that. So could we please have this rather than something that's of no direct benefit to the village? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions for the Parish Council? I see none. Thank you very much. We have no objectors wishing to speak. We actually have a supporter, Miss Melanie Wheeler. Tom, could you advise when Miss Wheeler's on the screen, please?
Miss Wheeler is in the room, Mr. Chairman.
Miss Wheeler, can you hear us? Oh, we see you. Can you hear us? I can't hear you. No, we can't hear you, but you're not muted. Now that's an interesting one.
Me.
Oh.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. That's wonderful.
Perfect.
Now,
Apologies for that.
you have up to 5 minutes to make your points. Can I assist you with any timekeeping?
No, hopefully I should be done in before 5 minutes to get the points across.
It's a maximum at a target, I'm always flippantly say, but please remain on the screen when you finish talking.
Sure.
For any questions members may have, although they're not very questioning tonight. You give them anything to ask you. So the time is yours.
Thank you. So I'm very much a supporter. I think it would be great to be able to use an existing building in a very tranquil setting that actually is in the heart of the village. And the village is at a size now where we do need services like this, and they are very well sought after. And by not having them in the village means that people do have to commute and therefore use their cars more often. But I think not only does it provide people with jobs and the economic side is well covered, but for me, it's more around providing services to all ages of people, whether they're children, teens, elderly, or in their kind of mid-prime. It's going to help them with their well-being, short-term, long-term. Their mental health in a very positive way will be impacting. It's going to get people active. The area already, you know, people do go out to walk a lot around that part of the village. It's going to keep people learning by the well-being things that are going to be offered. And it's also going to connect people, which I think nowadays, after we've gone through 2 years of lockdowns, is really important. And the mental health is something that I'm a really strong believer in. And this will be exceptionally supportive of that. It's going to take less travel. So for myself, I have a daughter, lots of friends that she has in the village that are very sporty. I have to currently drive way out of the village to be able to provide her with the services that are proposed at Man's Farm. And that is overall going to support the environment as well.
Thank you. That was wonderfully succinct. Any questions for Ms. Wheeler, please, members? Oh, I'm getting lots of shakes of heads. So you obviously made your points well enough without the need for any further questions. Thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thanks.
Now we have in person the applicant and their agent, please, you're all welcome, all three of you are welcome to come to the dais. The bad news is you don't have 5 minutes each, you have 5 minutes to share. So how you use that time is entirely up to you. Can I assist you? You can all speak, you can all have whatever 5 divided by 3 is, just over a minute and a bit each, or...
Could you give us a warning at 2.5 minutes?
I will do that with pleasure. And if only 2 of you wish to speak, the third one can answer any questions if there are any.
Well, we hopefully will all speak.
That's absolutely fine. I will guide you as best I can. So your time will start now.
Wonderful. The application before you is a farm diversification project with only a single point of objection. The site is only just over half a mile from the centre of Mortimer with its regular bus service. The application therefore hinges on the view of sustainability in highway terms. On the viewing day, the committee hopefully gained an understanding of how close the site is to Mortimer. The close proximity of an existing footpath will give access directly into the centre of Mortimer and provide an alternative means of access to the site. The council's own economic department confirmed the proposals comply with policy regarding the long-term viability of an agricultural business and its need to diversify. They confirm this compliance should outweigh the concerns raised regarding additional traffic. The highways officer has also raised concerns that users would be drawn from further afield as Mortimer does not have a sufficient population. We have confirmed by reference to a recent study undertaken for compulsory and alternative medicine that the population of Mortimer and Burfield would be sufficient to support the proposed facility without the need to draw on areas further afield. The wellness centre will be beneficial to the local community by providing much needed wellness facilities to the surrounding area. We hear every day how health services are overstretched and that wellness, mental health and complementary treatments are being seen as an important part of a modern health system. In addition to creating a number of employment opportunities, the centre will also provide facilities for existing wellness practitioners to use, a number of which have expressed an interest, and emails confirming this have been submitted as additional information in support of this application. The traditional farm building and part of the steel shed already have prior approval for conversion to the same use. This is currently underway. Therefore, most of the proposed traffic generation has already been allocated. I now hand you over to Mr. and Mrs. Strang, who will provide further background information on their proposals.
And you have just under 3 minutes between you.
I'm a third generation young farmer at Man's Farm. My granddad took on the tenancy from Englefield Estate in 1936, followed by my dad in 1978. We farm 175 hectares, of which most is arable land with some new environmental options that started last year. As subsidy payments are withdrawn over the next 4 years, it is important for farmers to diversify as many aspects of the farm as possible to generate income. Central government are encouraging rural diversification, and we have managed to achieve a substantial leader grant for the project, which has made it all possible. The idea to turn the redundant, dilapidated buildings into a wellness centre was welcomed by Englefield Estate and members of the village. My wife Camilla is qualified in a number of practices such as yoga and hypnobirthing, and would be in control of the day-to-day running of the business, allowing her to work at the farm whilst looking after our new family member, Lionel, aged 1. The idea of a wellness centre so close to the village of Mortimer will be well received by local residents, being easily accessible by walking or cycling for those unable to drive. The practices that the centre will be offering to people will be great for physical and mental health, from yoga, Pilates and physio to hypnobirthing, counselling and even sign language lessons. Soul Barns will in time be able to offer so much to people. It also provides an area for locals who need a space to further their businesses in such therapies. With such a push on rural diversification from the top, as demonstrated with the newly announced Rural England Prosperity Fund, it seems strange to be failing at the very first hurdle, the planning stage. With one rejection from Highways Officer based on sustainability, i.e. a slight increase in traffic movements, what hope does any rural diversification project have that is in an even more...
1 minute remaining.
That is in an even more remote location compared to our well-located farm in Mortimer? I want to help others and add to the local village camaraderie and continue the running of the farm as a young farmer, doing all I can to make it work.
Hi, my name's Camilla, and I'll be running the Wellness Centre alongside my husband, Will. I'm looking to provide a space to local people and local practitioners and teachers who are searching for a calming, fun, and invigorating space where there is a real sense of community to be a part of. I'm trained in yoga, hypnobirthing, Reiki, and hypnotherapy, and I'm looking to offer wellness for the body, mind, and soul for those that join us at Soul Barns. Here for any questions.
Well, thank you very much. Councillor McKinnon, you have a question.
Thanks, Chairman. And I will be asking our officers this as well, but you've heard that our highways officers have modelled 93 traffic movements in and out of the site per day. I just wondered if you had any comment, like if you recognise those figures, what you consider that to be accurate, inaccurate?
I mean, I would say that is based on full capacity, which it doesn't look like it's
24 people on the first studio is not going to happen. I wouldn't do more than 15 people per class. Just, it's not a London gym, so I wouldn't be doing that. So there would never be more than 15 people in one studio for starters. So yeah, that figure for me is very high.
Brings it on the high side.
Very high. Yeah.
I think Councillor McKinnon. Right, thank you, Councillor Stewart.
Sorry, trying to find all my notes. I've scrawled lots of things all over here. So thank you for elaborating on that, because that was one of my questions actually, was where it talks about 24 people. And I'm thinking that if, you know, when I go to a yoga class or something like that, you go perhaps for an hour and then you've got the next batch coming through, and actually that sounded to me like there would be a lot more traffic movements than even than has been predicted. So my other question is, and I don't know who can answer this, is about the square footage of the current the cart shed, is it we call it? Yes. Yeah. So we've got the cart shed, and then you've got the other building that's going to be completely knocked down and replaced. And I'm sure if I sat down with a ruler, I might be able to work out all of this, but it wasn't clearly placed in here. So what is the current square footage of the two buildings, and what will be the proposed square footage?
Well, in answer to your question, I haven't got the square footages to hand, okay, but the footprint of the two buildings as proposed is exactly the same as the existing footprint of the two buildings that are there, apart from the addition of a small link building, right, which is a reception area.
Which is the reception area, okay. So it will actually increase a little bit by the sounds of it, because you've got a
link structure between the two, yes.
Okay, all right, lovely, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mays.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening. One or 2 points I was raised on the initial statement by your architect. There isn't a bus on Sunday at all in Mortimer, and the bus stop by the St John's Church is a lot more than the distance you gave. So it's a lot more remote than you indicated, and it's not accessible on a Sunday. So all the people going there will either have to use a bike, walk, or use a car. That brings us down to...
Is this a debating point or a question, Councillor Mays? No, you're making a bit of a statement like a debate. Do you have a question based on topics that those making their representations made in their statement? That's critical, as we all know.
Distance to the bus stop and the accessibility on a Sunday, because it's not accessible 7 days a week. Is that correct?
I mean, I would say certainly that I anticipate a lot of people to actually walk to the site. We had, well, I don't know, but for those of you at the site visit, there is a footpath that comes directly to the site.
So the distance that you referred to, I took that from the OS plan.
There's a lot further you said,
which says it just over half a mile from the centre of Mortimer to the barns, taking the view of the route of the footpaths. it's as per the OS plans.
Okay, I
And the
think
bus
you
stop
need-
is in the middle
need to
of.
check
in the
that
middle of
anyway.
that,
Okay, I'll leave the rest until
Right,
break.
thank you, Rod. Are there any other questions for the applicant agent? No, before I get to thank you very much, all of you. Please, you're obviously welcome to stay. In that Councillor Stewart did ask a question on square footage, which the agent didn't have the accurate detail. Unusually, but it's my privilege to do this, asked Mr. Dre to give me the square footages that he has on the screen right by him before I come to the ward member.
Thank you. They're in meters, I'm afraid. From the application form, it's the existing gross internal floor space, so what's there now basically, is 173.3 square meters. And the gross new internal floor space, bear in mind the link, is 192.6. So a net additional grossing internal floor space of 19.2 square meters.
Well, that was the question you asked, Councillor Stewart. So without further ado, could you please advise me when one of the other of the three ward members is on the screen? I believe Councillor Longton is not. Is that correct? Right, Councillor Mays, are you going to let Councillor Bridgman go first?
Yes,
in that
yeah.
you're on the committee and can debate. That's lovely. Okay, just checking.
Is he there?
Councillor Bridgman is in the room, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Bridgman, can you hear us?
I can indeed, Chairman. I hope you can hear and see me as well.
You can do both. You know the score. I won't.
I do indeed, Chairman. Shall I start? But apologies, Chairman, if I start coughing, you'll know that I'm just coming off the back end of COVID. So I have a bit of a cough. So if I seize up, bear with me. Chairman, members, as well as being a ward member, I am of course portfolio holder for health and wellbeing, and I am keen on any development that enhances the health and wellbeing of residents of West Berkshire and of my ward. Principal issue here, members, is of course sustainability. But generally, is the restoration of the cart shed a good idea? I suggest it is. Is the replacement of the steel framed and clad building with something resembling the restored cart shed a good idea? Again, I suggest it is. Is it good to diversify a rural business? Again, yes. Now, the point's just been made about the square meterage of this development, and the current meterage is roughly 176, I think, and it's intended to increase by the connecting reception area to about 195 from memory. Now, I just reflect that the permitted development order refers to 150 square meters, and that is an indication that at that level, you don't need to do anything apart from persuade the local authority of certain things. It's in the pack, but one of those is not sustainability. So I now turn to the nub of this application, i.e. sustainability, and I'm going to refer to the amended proposed reason for refusal that is in the update pack. Members, that updated recommendation refers to policies ADPP1 and 6, but advises that only appropriate limited development will be allowed, and that policy CS10 of the core strategy supports proposals to diversify the rural economy in appropriate locations, and policy CS11 directs main town centre uses to town and district centres. So ADPP1 and 6 must allow for CS10, and here I suggest CS10 is to be preferred of those policies. So far as CS11 is concerned, is this a town centre use? I suggest not. Even if it was, is there anywhere else suitable for this proposal? Now, you've heard from Councillor Morsley, and personally, knowing the availability of business premises within Mortimer, I suggest not. So let's now go back to this updated recommendation. It says that the proposed wellness centre will significantly increase traffic in a remote rural location. Now, you have heard that this is not precisely remote, and as I hope you saw at the site visit, it isn't. But let's pause there and remember that Mortimer is a rural service centre with about 4,000 residents. And next door is Burfield, another separate rural service centre with about 6,000 residents. So I do suggest that there is scope for those residents to supply the clientele for this site. And back to this reason. Has no nearby bus routes. Well, firstly, let me remind members that under the home to school transport legislation, a child of 8 is capable of walking 3 miles each way to school, and that's 4.82 kilometres. By my calculations, I don't know if this is contrary to what Councillor Mays believes, but the nearest bus stop is roughly 1 kilometre away. A Mortimer railway station is just over 2 kilometres away, in each case by designated public footpaths or footways. Back to the reasons. And is accessible only by rural roads and by public rights-of-way network, which is not conducive to cycling or walking, particularly in the evenings or winter months. Members, the idea that rural roads are not conducive to cycling astonishes me. Even more astonishing is the concept that public rights-of-way are not conducive to walking. But what if there was no public transport or easy walking route? Are we saying that we must concentrate all of our rural businesses in urban settings? Doesn't that just kill off farm diversification?
1 minute left.
Thank you. Members, Councillor Maudsley makes a very telling point that this proposal might actually reduce vehicle journeys by people no longer having to go elsewhere. I support this proposal. The Parish Council and the Neighbourhood Plan supports this proposal, and I hope you will as well. Thank you, members.
Right, thank you. Members, Councillor Linder has a question.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Councillor Bridgman, would you say that the weight to the policies is important, and particularly, do you see this as being subjective? And also, would you have comments on a potential call-in if the members agree with you? Or it's not appropriate for the last...
Well, I'm not clear on the second point, Councillor Linder. Perhaps you could expand that, explain to me. I mean, I called this application to committee. I'm not certain what you mean by a further calling, but let me deal with the first point. Yes, in this instance, members, we've had this debate. We had this debate over the site in Brimpton, and no doubt Councillor McKinnon in particular might bring up in debate his thoughts on rural diversification and, in particular, the use of the motor car in rural settings. I simply comment that what has been pointed out, not simply by me, is that this site is not a million miles distant in the middle of nowhere. This is quite close to Mortimer, and it is very well served by public rights of way leading themselves to footways. It is very easy to walk from this site pretty much anywhere you like within Mortimer, within a not great distance and not much time. And certainly I could get to the railway station within about 20 minutes from there.
Oh, Chairman, if I could just add on point 2, just to explain myself. Obviously, if the members agree with you and go against officer's recommendation, would you think it's reasonable for it to go up to the District Planning Committee?
Chairman, I will answer that question. I know you're going to suggest that it shouldn't, but if I may, I think the report says this is a fairly balanced decision. Now, I'd seek a steering from officers, but I would hope not.
Councillor Linder, I don't think that was really a valid question for the ward member. It's a matter of us determining the weight between the economic benefits and the accessibility. And I think this planning committee, I'm advised, would be able to make that judgment. Are there any other questions for the ward member specifically? In that case, questions for officers,
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bridgman. Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a couple. They might seem a bit specific, but I think it's important to get this right. This question about unsustainable location, it's really important to get this right, not least for the reasons that Councillor Bridgman has just elucidated. My first question to, I guess, is to Ms. Kirk. In paragraph 5.8 of the report, you've produced paragraph 85 of the NPPF, and this is in support of the the recommendation to refuse. I was just asking, why did you not produce that paragraph in full? There's a sentence that's missing at the end of that, which I think perhaps gives a different direction. And that sentence is, this is not produced in 5.8. The sentence is, the use of previously developed land and sites physically well related to existing settlements should be encouraged where suitable opportunities exist. That is the final part of paragraph 85, and I just wondered why it didn't make the report.
Can anyone assist with that?
Chairman, I can confirm that was a correct reading of the full paragraph.
So it enables us to use judgment, I guess, is the answer.
My second question is, and this might be to Gareth rather than you, Gemma, how do you get 93 vehicle movement?
Mr. Dowding, can you answer that one, please?
I can, yes, thank you. We used our standard tricks calculations to work out what the movements would be from a commercial business such as the size of what's being proposed to work out what the traffic movements would be in and out. I also believe that there were some traffic figures supplied by the applicant as well, which obviously were checked.
And Mr. Dre wants to add, I believe.
Yeah, Chairman, can I just clarify that we need to, when we assess planning applications too, we are looking at the use as well. So it's not just necessarily the occupant at the time. So we have to consider the worst case scenario when we're looking at the potential impacts. Thank you.
Well, that makes sense. Yes, it's not a personal permission; it goes with the property. Thank you.
Understood. And just one final question, if I may, at this point,
yes.
Chairman. In the amended reason for refusal, amongst many policies quoted in the final paragraph, the proposed development is therefore contrary to policies, etc. So CS10 is quoted, and there's a genuine question. I'd like to know why it's against CS10 in your judgment. So I'm looking at CS10 now, and I just can't see it.
Okay. Can anyone illuminate?
We look at the policies as a whole, so we're listing all the ones that are relevant there. I think the particular point is regarding, hold on, I'm trying to get it up, apologies. So obviously supports farm diversification, but it focuses towards being located in or adjacent to rural service centres. Now, there's obviously the debate there to be had. It's not immediately adjacent. There is a distance between there, and members need to take into account, make a judgment as to whether they think that distance is too far or not. But I think that's the point we're getting at there.
Okay, so it's another judgment issue, in other words.
Okay, if it's a judgment issue, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. Councillor Linden.
Yes, Chairman, I would like to go what I discussed with Councillor Bridgman for the officers, that they accept this is, I know they've made a recommendation, but it's viewed in a subjective manner, and that we will make the final decision of this committee.
Well, I'll answer that, Councillor Linden. That is our role.
Yeah,
So
but it could
that
be
is
moved up.
entirely our role.
Yes,
happy to.
but I mean against policy, so I'd just like an answer for that. For the officers.
It's an interpretation of policy. We can't make policy.
I realise that.
Mr. Dre, do you wish to add to what I said?
I think members need to interpret the policies, and they can, if we've offered our interpretation of those policies, and you can, as long as you make a reasonable decision, if you wish to, if you do come to a different judgment, then that's fine. As long as it's reasonable, you can explain how you've done it. I think ultimately this application falls on a matter of weight. It's balancing the benefits to the rural economy, which we're giving significant weight to, against what we consider to be a relatively inaccessible location. Now, you can look at the various component parts of that as being discussed in the report and also discussed by the speakers today, and come up with your own view on the interpretation and the weights you give to it. I say we've looked at it we have to look at it as a worst case scenario, and regrettably, because we want to support the rural economy, but we think it's a little bit too far on this particular case. But if you give different weight to the competing issues, and you can explain that and justify it, then that, and to the extent that it's a reasonable decision, then that is fine. That's a safe decision to come to.
Thank you, Chairman.
Pleasure. Councillor Mays.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Back from me. For Dow, Richard Dowding. Where is he? Sorry, up there.
On Zoom, but he can hear you and will reply.
Gareth, do you realise that Mortimer Lane is often used when the street, which is the main road through Mortimer to the station, is closed? Do you realise that that narrow lane is used as a diversion route? It is the only route in Mortimer which is used as a diversion in extreme circumstances.
We are aware, yes, that within Mortimer, when there are extreme circumstances and roads are closed for whatever reason, that diversion routes will be used, and that in fact locals will use their own diversion routes because they know their network better than we do. However, if there is any closures in the main roads within Mortimer, we have to ensure that the diversion routes are actually routes which are suitable for all class of vehicles and types of vehicles. So although it may be used as a diversion route for locals, it won't be necessarily the official diversion. But I don't really see what that's got to do with this application, because we're talking here about potentially over 90 additional vehicles per day going down, a short length of country road, but a length of country road that has no footways, has limited verge areas to walk on because of the ditches either side, and certainly has no passing places.
Agreed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Still on questions? Are there any further? No. Anything planning officers wish to add? I'm getting shakes of heads. Do I look to Councillor Somner, or is someone else going to start it off? Oh, Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you, Chairman. Yep, I'll start this one off. Thanks, and thanks to the officers, and thanks to all contributors who've spoken so far very well. I'm glad that we've established that this decision does turn on a judgment. We're looking at sustainability. The report states factually in a couple of cases, which I think is maybe a bit strong, but it states that the reason for the refusal here is because it is in an unsustainable location. And the principal reason for that is because it's away from public transport and accessible walking routes. And there's maybe a bit of a debate about whether that's accurate or not. And I think crucially, it's on the fact that in the officer's judgment, you can only reasonably reach this site by car. Now, there's three elements of sustainability, I'm sure members are well aware, that are specified in the NPPF. One is economic, one is social, and one is environmental. And again, to be fair to the officers, I think it's a good report actually in the main. The report recognises, it's quite explicit, that there are economic benefits to this. And I think that the report leans on the fact that it would be of economic benefit to the farm. Not that that's a bad thing. In fact, CS10 says exactly that we should be supporting that. But let's also not forget that these rooms will be available for independent practitioners to use as well. It's not just the farm that will benefit from this. There will be independent business people, small business people, who could now have this facility to use when perhaps they might have to go elsewhere. There will be a social benefit. Again, the report makes that clear about it being a meeting place. It's going to provide some health benefits. So again, to be fair, the economic and social benefits, I think, are well presented. I just think there's something missing, that there's some other businesses as well that would benefit. It's not just the existing farm. And then we get to the environmental part of it. And then the report, I think wrongly in my view, says that that outweighs the economic and social benefits. Now, Councillor Bridgman made a very good point, and I think the applicants and agents made a good point earlier on. It's one I entirely agree with, that when you look at the location of many of our rural businesses, our farms, who government are telling to diversify, it's what we're asking them to do. Most of them aren't anywhere near as close to a service centre as this farm is. Most of them are in the middle of nowhere. And are we really saying to those businesses that if your diversification idea, whether it's a wellness centre, whether it's a wedding venue, the sort of things we've seen before, if that's going to result in more people driving to your business than there were before, and I'll come back to the 93 figure in a second, then that's unsustainable, and any economic or social benefits are going to be outweighed. It feels like the interpretation, the weighting that's given to environmental sustainability. And even that's arguable with cars getting cleaner all the time and becoming electric and all the rest of it. seems to me a little bit out of balance. Even if we accept 93 traffic movements, even if we do, and even if we think that's bad environmentally, on the Friday, this place is going to be open for 14 hours a day. Did I read that right? It's from 7 in the morning until 9 at night. So that's 14 hours. If you're looking at a maximum of 93 movements, it's between 6 and 7 an hour, one every 10 minutes. Nightingale Lane's not becoming the M4 here. So in conclusion, I think you can see where I'm going with this. In my opinion, in my judgment, the economic and social elements of sustainability outweigh any negative environmental impact. Therefore, this should be considered to be in a sustainable location, or a sustainable development, I should say. So in my judgment, it would comply with the policies. To come to Councillor Linden's point earlier on, this is not going against policy, it's an interpretation of a policy. And I think I am very much minded to support the application and not support the recommendation of the report.
Thank you for that. Was a well-informed debate. Councillor Linden, do you agree?
Thank you, Chairman. I would concur with Councillor McKinnon on this. I think there are I think it's subjective in terms of the need for what the proposal. And I would say it's important for health and well-being, and being on Health Scrutiny Committee. I know I'm here on Planning Committee rules, but it's also, I think, important for things like community cohesion. I mean, the studios would be useful for people to meet, whether people are lonely or not, especially those more advanced or even younger in years, mothers. There's also other practices like chiropractors, for instance. I visited one in Crowthorne, and I went to one today. But it is important to provide the needs for Mortimer, and not that far away for Burfield. And I think this is a valuable role in the countryside, and I don't think the harm is as serious as made out. I respect the officer's report and their detailed work on it, but my view is to go against officer's recommendation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Sumner.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't think this is as straightforward as is being made out. I think we have to look at what's in front of us. Now, we've heard tonight that it won't be the case, but the paperwork says 24 people in one studio. That's 24 people in that will be leaving, 24 people out that will be coming in. That's not a few, that's a lot. Now, it may be, and here we are, we're getting into the ifs and buts. It may be that we're not going to have 24 people in there. Actually, that's what we've heard this evening. It's not as straightforward, and that's why it's in balance. I actually like what I see as far as the application is concerned. I like what they're trying to achieve. I like the way that everybody's going about it. But I look at that road and I have reservations, and I think that's where officers are coming from. And we should never lose sight of that. These are people that are highly trained in their field to look at exactly those sort of things. Now, whether we vote against the current recommendation, we'll find out shortly. But I think we just need to be careful with the reasons that we are each finding to achieve that decision. Yeah, well, thank you. Yes, yeah, we do have to be careful. We can't make policy here. That is made in other places. We can interpret policy. We can put a judgment call on it, and let's see what that judgment is eventually. I've got two more people wishing to speak at the moment. Councillor Mays.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm in favour of the project as recommended. I support what Ross McKinnon has said, and I would second that proposal if it gets that far.
I don't think anyone's made one yet, but I'm always open for a proposal to be put on the table.
Okay, I'll make a proposal that it should go ahead then.
Well, we'll come up with some conditions if it does go through. If that is a proposal of approval, does that find a seconder?
Sorry, not the proposal, I want to have the project. So it's against the proposal, sorry.
You want to approve this
I want to
against
approve the
officer's
application as it was
recommendation?
submitted.
Yes, right. Does that find a seconder? We'll work out conditions if we vote in favour of it. Does that find a seconder? It does, Councillor McKinnon. Right, it doesn't preclude debate. I'm sure Mr. Drake can assist us later. Sorry, have you finished?
Yeah, basically,
Okay.
I've got other points we can raise later.
Would you want to make them now, or?
Yeah,
I've only got one other councillor wishing to speak.
I use Nightingale Lane quite a lot. It is a narrow road. There are no parking places or very, very few passing places on it. But I think the majority of people going there from the village of Mortimer would come along Hammond's Heath, which doesn't involve much of Nightingale Lane. If they come from Burfield, they would probably come from the western end of Nightingale Lane, and it won't affect much the rest of the Nightingale Lane at all. So the actual travel by car to the site, irrespective of whether it's a weekday or Sunday, and as I said earlier, there's no buses on Sunday anyway, and it's a very long walk from the centre of the village, from the bus stop by St John's Church. So I don't think that the argument made that it's too remote is valid. I think that's a red herring. But as I said, I would propose that one should go ahead.
Thank you for that.
Against officers' recommendations.
We've got that. We'll work on some conditions. I think Mr. Dre might have some in his bottom drawer, so to speak. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. It's a really interesting debate, and I think it's really good that we're having this debate in a public way. As has been mentioned, there have been previous applications where similar conversations have taken place, although actually the mention of the wedding venue, it was a very different situation in my opinion, because it was talking about bringing lots of people into the area, because when you attend a wedding, you don't always live in that location. So that was very different. In terms of, so I have a role as mental health champion and also in my adult social care role. Absolutely, mental health, wellness, all of those good things that have been mentioned by the applicants and the supporters are absolutely essential. And we know that now even more so after the last couple of years. And like Councillor Somner, I really like the look of this. It looks really good. It looks like it will be very well used, listening to the local people that have talked about it, in particular from the parish council. And I think that for me was the really interesting point, to hear local views. The report is great and it gives us the facts that we need. But even if you attend a site visit, you are only getting a snapshot at that point. You don't actually live in those conditions, and therefore seeing it live and living it is very different. I think it was interesting to hear that actually people will, it sounds like, walk and cycle to the site. And if that is one of those situations that we're saying precludes this, that actually that makes it unsustainable, then that's starting to make me see it in a different light. I'm always wary of going against officers' advice, because they, as we've heard, they are the experts. But where we're talking about interpretation, I have to say, I am, through listening to debate, I am erring on the side of agreeing with the proposal that's been made.
Right, thank you. Well, I see no other hands up, so I'm not being presumptuous as to which way this is like to go, but I have a proposal of approval. In order to carry out a vote, I think we ought to really have some conditions proposed. Mr. Dre, can you assist us, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, also in the event of an overturn, we've got to be clear of the reasons for the overturn. I mean, I've obviously listened to the debate, and I think to sum it up in a nutshell, it's that the social and economic benefits outweigh the environment, the accessibility concerns. If that's an agreement, then we'll record that as the reason. I would ask that you delegate to officers to agree to determine the conditions that we apply. But I've got a list that we drafted just to give you a quick flavour of some of the things. I won't read them out, but basically conditions to cover the normal commencement, approved plans, materials, construction hours. There are a number of ecology conditions due to identified risks from bats, nesting birds, badgers. So there's details in that respect. It's important to stress that we need an emergency plan condition given the requests of our emergency planning officers. Energy statement, drainage, landscaping, and then conditions to make sure that the parking that's shown there is delivered at the right time. It's all just to make sure that the permission is enforceable. Lighting strategy given the rural location. Customer opening hours to match up with as presented in the application. And to ensure that the use is limited to what is proposed, because when you have a use class, you can change sometimes under permitted development to different uses. And obviously you've assessed it today under a specific set of proposals. So I won't go into detail, but they're the kind of things we would look to cover. Condition.
Very helpful as always, Mr. Dre. Before I go to the vote, I see Mr. Dowding's put his hand up. Mr. Dowding.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just following on what Bob was saying about conditions. Obviously, we'd also want our standard highway conditions placed on it. Things like visibility, gates, surfacing, that sort of thing, and a construction method statement to ensure that vehicles don't end up driving all around the countryside.
Yeah, very sensible too, and thank you for your guidance. Members, are we clear? We have a proposal on the table of approval with that list of conditions and the highways conditions, which are all very standard. It has been seconded. Those in favour, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And against? And abstention, 1. Conditional permission is granted. Right. Thank you for that. That concludes the meeting, everybody. Thank you indeed for your support and your participation. Please may I ask you to remain in the Zoom meeting until the host has confirmed the live streaming has stopped, and also to remain to discuss site visits.